Of the Helotes Economic Development Corporation to order at 7 o'clock on Wednesday, the 16th. Okay. Do we have any citizens to be heard? No citizens to be heard, okay. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. All consent agenda items listed below are considered routine by EDC staff and are intended to be acted in one motion. There is no separate discussion on these items unless the director requests it, and in the event that will be removed from the consent agenda and considered as normal sequence of the agenda. Does anybody have anything they want to remove off of the consent agenda? No, sir. Okay. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Consent agenda.
Director, then we have to make a motion first.
Yes. Yeah, I was wondering if I actually heard an actual motion, and I said,
Okay. I move that we approve consent agendas number 3 and 4 as written.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Individual items for consent. Number 5, discussion of possible action on the 2025 proposed operating budget. And then there's number 6, but I think, Scott, you said you wanted to flip-flop those?
Yes, sir. So Director Helotes, if you don't mind, if we could take number 6 before number 5, as I think some of the items will flow into the budget in number 5.
Okay. Does anybody have an issue with that? Okay. We're going to move on to item 6, so we'll go back to number 5. Discussion.
so I would recommend that we take it for discussion first, and then that way you can hear the matter, and then if there is a motion available, we'll take it after hearing,
Okay.
as a pattern.
Number 6 is discussion, direction, and possible action on Helotes Fitness Park and disc golf course master plan developed by Burdick Consultants LLC. Do we have a motion for discussion?
So moved for discussion.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion for discussion, so. You want to go first, Joel, since you made the motion?
We're going to get some.
Yeah, I'll provide a little summary for
Okay.
y'all, and then obviously open it up for discussion. But directors, so at the last board meeting, we had a line item or a discussion topic related to the park. And subsequent to the last board meeting, we had a meeting with Burdick that myself, Director Hayden, previous President Lopez, and our Public Works Director, Corey, attended. And so with Claudia from Burdick to, number one, really get up to speed for myself. That was my first introduction into the park master plan. And then she did take comments related to our feedback related to the document that she presented. And so in your packet is the document that she walked us through. I'm not sure if that's something historical that you all have seen, but really we kind of just lightly walked through it, and she reviewed the public input that was provided for them on the related topics that are in our master plan. And so there was roughly 100 respondents to the survey that was provided for public input. There were topics, and I'm just going to give you some of the summary of the comments that we provided back to Burdick. But water activities was obviously, water play features was a highly interested topic from our survey. It was our discussion that really isn't something that we would like to focus on in the sense of the cost and the maintenance into it. If there's anything that we do related to a water feature, it may be something as like a mister or something to that, but really not a priority of what we would want to focus on out there. Shading did receive interest, and we received some comments related to wanting to see more natural trees versus structures related to shading, as well as our public works may be able to assist with some of the trees out there with a city program related to mitigation with trees. So that topic came out, and then there's also small games. Small outdoor games was received about 40% of the survey response, and so we do have what's called a tech ball table in our Public Works Department, so that can be utilized for out there. It's available. It would be whenever and however we want to use that when it goes in. So those are some of the feedbacks, but really the number one priority was related to parking, and the primary parking entryway that's out there currently is the first option, and obviously ADA accessibility related to that parking, as well as any other improvements that we do out there. So provided that we move forward with those items, parking would be really the priority item, and then the other document that I provided in your packet listed the priority items and then put updated pricing related to those items. So just last week, Claudia sent back to me the pricing related to parking improvements, which has gone up since we received it last year. The improvements to the trail, shading, et cetera, et cetera. So in general, it was the feedback that I just provided to you as far as comments, and then the focus being working on the parking, with the next steps related to parking being a geotechnical surveys and the proper engineering that would need to be done related to improving the parking out there. And I would ask Director Hayden, you were there, so any added commentary that you feel I'm not covering, I'd love for you to add in and support anything. So I will say this, in just the last few days, we do have another parking option for the park. They're labeling it Parking B, but in conversations with our Public Works Director, he's been in touch with TxDOT related to the improvements on 1560. And there is some timing that we would need to be involved with when it comes to that parking and their improvements that are going to be taking place out there. So we will have to understand when we want to address that area. Obviously, it's not the number one option, but in relation to how TxDOT is taking on the improvements of the 1560, we would want to work in at least an access driveway if we are going to go that route, and make that timing in with the TxDOT improvements. So those are the feedback. Burdett is moving forward with a final product, so a written final product with narrative and diagrams and illustrations. And they're taking all the feedback that they've received through our meeting. And then if there's, what I'm looking for from this board is any other feedback that you'd like to provide related to the park that I can then pass on to them, and they can incorporate in their final document. So
Was parking B the additional parking down on the opposite side? Is that where it was?
yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll start. So
He was there.
I'm going to kind of take this one point at a time. When it came to structures or shade, the discussion was just the price of upkeep was the main concern if we have a physical structure there. We played with different ideas and such, and there's actually something that Corey was looking into to where we might have a fund available to us to add additional trees that would literally just be a wash for the city, as long as they could be utilized like that. So I don't know, do you know if he got an answer on that, Scott?
I don't think he has yet.
So
Are we required to irrigate those? Typically you do, I think.
the trees, it's a certain list of trees that are drought tolerant.
Gotcha.
I've looked through the list of trees and I did a little research on what they were. They're not oak trees. They're not your typical, what you would have. They're different than.
They would require some irrigation up front, though, when installed.
Yes, but that's something that Corey said that they would be willing to do in the beginning, but we wouldn't have to set up an irrigation system for them. It would just be more of watering and maintenance for the first year or two to help maintain them, get them off the ground, if you will. Do y'all have any questions on that particular? Hopefully that'll come through and we can actually utilize, because that money was actually given to us for Oak Wilt grants, but we're kind of, I guess, kind of hit a turning point here in Helotes where it's not being utilized, but there's still that pocket of money sitting there. So hopefully that can get some funding towards some shade. When it came to water features, it's not reasonable. There's no way to reasonably do it out there safely, given where it's at and so forth. So, we did talk about misters, but it's a real low priority in the grand scheme. Parking is the primary focus because we need to get that off the ground. In order to facilitate doing the rest of the stuff, we got to be able to have people be able to get in and out of there safely and easily. There was a question about another easement in that parking lot area. I haven't heard if there's any additional information on that. We're definitely aware of one easement that is running through that area, but there's a second one that may affect some of this parking lot.
Yes, and Corey did forward me documentation related to that I forwarded to Burdett, and they didn't have any concerns with that.
Okay, so we're good on that.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel that, moving forward with the parking, the other thing that we discussed, I'm sorry, was I brought up the fact that the existing exercise equipment is a hazard right now. And I'm just concerned that it would create an issue for us at some point if somebody is out there getting hurt. Now, mind you, I do drive by that pretty frequently, and I do see people using it, and I know it's going to upset a few people by removing it, but it's just that equipment it's at full lifespan. So we should at some point look at putting something back in there, but after the parking lot and then after the trail is safe and we're ADA compliant would be probably the best time to look at putting something back in there for working out, etc. Number one priority at this point, I believe, is just parking.
So I will add, just with the updated pricing and priorities list that was provided, it's coming to roughly an aggregate total, if we did all of those 8 projects, 2.2 million and some change there. So one of the things Burdett can do is price or provide us a plan that is either over a 5-year time frame or a 10-year time frame based on how we're looking to budget for this. So some feedback related to that would be great. And then also they will also in their final document provide some additional funding opportunities that we can look at to help with costs associated with the park.
So it looks like the last page is kind of a breakdown of the summary there of the priority projects which are color coded. Is that relatively accurate? Because the totals don't add up, or I guess this is a range that they're giving us. So I guess we're erring on the low side, it looks like, based on the 2.249 and then what they have on that very last page. It's not page 44 of the agenda there. I was wondering if those is that a further breakdown of the summary that's kind of above that? Is that a good synopsis, or is that not correct?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Director. That's the additional document that she provided with this priority project. So as I agree with you, it's not necessarily, I'm not seeing how the numbers total. But I do believe it's a supplemental document to this one. So I think it's very reliable.
Okay. I guess one of the questions I had was on the original, what did they call this, preliminary programming findings, the actual pictures where they had stuff, an aerial of it. They had that multi-use space, which was baseball, soccer practice, open play space. And I assume there would have been, I see there's stuff for a pickleball court and stuff like that in this, what I'm calling the breakdown, the very last page, but I'm not seeing anything associated with a backstop for a baseball or soccer or anything like that. Was that discussed at all for that open green space? I see grading, so I assume that's what some that applies to that, the mass grading, site work, part of that. But is there anything else, was that discussed, a backstop or anything for soccer that could be utilized? And there's not much for soccer, really.
I don't know, I
But
couldn't-
the backstop would be for the baseball, and I assumed that would really be utilized quite a bit. That was one of the things we discussed, was that there's a lot of little league teams around here that would utilize that for practice if they could. And I would assume that would be a much lesser cost than a pickleball court, which we have 4 of already nearby too.
Our conversation did not focus on soccer or baseball in that area, from my recollection.
Okay.
No, it was more on the immediate needs, the first couple of years, if you will, of what needs to happen.
That was my next question. Are they going to help? I mean, we've kind of broken it up here in priorities, right? But are we going to set up is it our responsibility, I guess, to come up with how we want to do this in stages? Is that going to fall on us, or are they giving a recommendation there as well?
Their final document will give that recommendation, unless we overall feel there is something that should be moved up in a priority. They've said it, and they'll provide how that timeline flows.
Yeah, that's all I have.
Sabrina?
I don't have anything.
Talking about the breakdown and then the phases of it, of course, that's going to depend on what our budget is too. We're going to have to look at that and see, because, looking at the price of the parking lot, that's a pretty good chunk up front compared to what the others are. So it may be parking lot only, and then, the next year you pick up 1 or 2 items or 3 or 4 items, just depending on the pricing and where the budget's at. So.
I feel like we should consider looking at getting some design build pricing on parking lots to parallel them finishing this, so that if we need to make any adjustments, we can now, while we still have them under contract. You in agreement on that?
Design build for the parking lots as far as providing that information to Burdett, or,
Well, that way at least we can kind of see where their pricing is versus what real life is out here in Helotes. Not for both parking lots. I know that there's some coordination that would have to happen for that lower parking lot, and along with being in the floodplain, et cetera. But the upper parking lot definitely needs some attention pretty quickly.
So what we have to do in our, what we have to do for that request for qualifications to move forward on that, or?
Yeah, ultimately, we'd have to, because of naturally the price point, we'd
Right.
have to make sure that we get those responders back in and see how it flows out. That's something that, from a standpoint of utilizing in conjunction with Public Works to be able to kind of flow through that.
So you wanted us to move forward formally with getting pricing, or do you want to?
I think that would be a good option. I mean, I don't see where we can actually execute anything else right now. If we got pricing, I mean, all we're doing is putting it out to bid. We have a basic plot plan, unless there's something in here that anybody would like to change. But I don't see the parking lot as getting relocated anywhere else on that map.
and for my clarification, so that would not hinder Burdett from moving forward with finalizing their documents. It's just more of us being able to compare pricing compared to what their estimates are coming in at.
Right.
Okay.
If I may, I actually had a question of if they were gonna share their sources of how they did their pricing, or the methodology by which they came up with the pricing. I don't expect that we have that today, but other than just the numbers, but I'm just curious if they were willing to share.
I'll ask. Yeah, I know a question of some of the pricing on their prior priority list came up during our meeting, and since it had been so long, she went back after our meeting and provided this updated list. Where she got those numbers from, I'm not sure.
Understood.
So I can follow up with her on that.
I'd be fine with that. I mean, that's the next step in the process, so I'd be we're not spending any money. We're not spending any money by going out to bid on the parking lot. And it sounds like that's pretty much the universal consensus here, that the parking lot needs to be addressed first.
It would take a measure of time to get that, the standards and everything built
yeah.
up to put out, so there's absolutely no impact to the birdie work.
But at least we're moving it forward, not just continuing to kick the can down the road like we have been for the last 6 months.
So we're gonna need to do a motion then for, if you want to, you're gonna want a motion for that to move forward.
It could be direction to start the process towards that, and ultimately, the funding piece would be really what's more important for the sake of an actual vote as I see it.
And that would probably be good to have that too, with our budget coming up too, if we could
Right.
start the process and see where we're at.
And it's a big piece of this pie.
Yes.
Does anybody have any direction for Scott on whether or not we have Burt planned out over a 5-year or 10-year program?
I know that conversation came up in our meeting, and 10-year may have been an option, and I'm just trying to recall how that conversation ended.
The direction that we went askew on that because it got tied into other projects, or potential projects, should I say.
I don't necessarily know if we need to do it by years, but maybe you do it as phases.
Yeah, maybe, yeah.
Like phase 1 is parking lot, phase 2 is trails and playground equipment, or something to that effect. And then it would depend on, you could do phase 1 and phase 2 the
Yeah.
first year, or you could do phase 1 and then nothing the next year, and then 2 and 3, or is what I'm thinking, budget-wise.
Well,
Yeah, it has to fit our budget, so it would be ideal to have numbers.
well, maybe the best option might be for them to price it as a 10-year, and then we could, if we see a couple of items that could be lumped together as a phase, do it in that way.
Well, I just think that trying to do a 10-year prediction on cost is going to be not
It's gonna be
accurate at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
I think if they, if we kind of figure what current pricing is, and if we broke it down by phases, and we know that if it's going to be more expensive down the road, asphalt's not going to get cheaper, playground equipment's not going to get cheaper. I think if we just did it that direction, we would be okay as necessarily pricing it out over 10 years. Because I don't think a 10-year would be accurate.
Well, I'm saying I'm talking about for their report. So how would we
How
like
do
to
they
see it? A
report
5-year or
out?
10-year?
I'd lean more towards a 10-year. I don't think this would be realistic that all of this would happen in 5 years, so
Okay.
I would tend more to say the 10-year.
And if we can tackle it in 5 years, obviously we would do that, but I
We
don't know
may
how
have bigger priorities by then. I mean,
Yeah.
we're just getting this off the ground in that sense, and something else might come up that we need to focus on.
Okay.
If we were gonna, I have a question, I guess, if you don't mind. If we were gonna share in the costs of any of this project or pieces of the project, how would be the best way to have it structured so that we could go for that splitting, assistance, whatever we wanna call it? Would that be easier to be done by the project, by the phase, is what I'm thinking? Not, we're not looking for, or maybe we are looking for a commitment for help with the entire project, I don't know. But I guess I'm looking for suggestions on that, as far as if the EDC wanted to ask the city for help with a certain part of the project, is what I'm alluding to.
Yeah, so I think that's a really great question. I think that, I'll say two things. One is the EDC, as a corporation, does have quality of life improvements and other improvements that are available to fund or to provide funding for. I would also like, if it has not occurred already, I believe the city council just in their last meeting or recent meeting did have like their thoughts on prioritization on overall out of the, I think, the 5 major areas. That was something that was actually discussed in the city council meeting. If there is going to be a request for what I would call a capital project support through the city, I think that needs to be ironed out if it's to impact the future budget, this next budget year. Because currently, I don't have that in my projection at all. I do believe that based on the funding that the EDC has, I think that is a very good conversation to look at internally. But I anticipate, even from my standpoint as the city administrator, I anticipate that even I would have questions about the previous uses of funds through various years to be able to say, okay, I understand your request. I'm looking back at quality of life and what has been the pattern to date. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. I guess if we could brainstorm on the best way to bring that to city council or to discuss that. Is it in phases? Is it in, hey, where do we anticipate getting that support from? And do we need to break that section out? Or do we need to look at it holistically as an entire project?
Like the 2.2 versus,
Right, versus the parking lot, let's say. Do we anticipate we would get help with the parking lot, but not all these other things, and would those kill any support that we could?
I think it's more logistically and legitimate to look at it in phases.
I think phase by phase, we do, say phase 1's parking lot. We look at that and we get a price on that and it comes back at 450. And then we take that to the city and say, do you want to help support this? And if they do or they don't, then okay, we decide what happens. And then when we move on to phase 2, get current pricing on that and then go from there. Because I don't think any estimates now are going to be accurate.
No, I agree.
Past 6 months, if that.
Or you lock yourself in on an agreement that's too short.
Right. So,
Scott, there was something else that I did want to jump back to, and I apologize. Whenever we're talking about shade, something that just occurred to me is like whenever QT built, they had taken out a certain amount of trees that they had to replant, and not all of those trees are on the QT property. They were able to plant them around the city. So we've got some other larger projects around town, so if we don't have one avenue, we may have another one to help with the addition of trees there as well. That's going to be circumstantial though, depending on if we have a project going where they're taking out trees and they don't have enough space to put the trees on that property.
Right, a portion of the tree mitigation is in that things of that kind of logic.
Yes, sir.
So I'll just add, I think Corey brought that up to have future conversations internally with you
Right.
about that option.
do you have what you need from us now?
I think so.
Enough direction there?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. Anybody have any further discussion? We'll move on to the next item on the agenda. Scott, you're up for the next one.
Okay. Do you mind reading that item?
Okay, let me scroll back up to it here. Discussion, direction, and possible action on the 2025-26 proposed operating budget.
I think you need a motion.
So directors, prior to this meeting, I sent out to you all a draft of, really structured as a P&L of the budget, our current budget, and then a column for the proposed budget. I've internally been a part of 2 workshops with the city's budget process, and so this is really the first opportunity that I've had to present to you all and start incorporating all of our thoughts related to the budget. And so I can walk through this, and then I'd really like to have an interactive conversation with your all's input. So related to revenue, I've kept all the figures the same. As far as tax revenue, a little bit of an increase related to the business center. And then I did reduce our interest estimate in more of in line with where we are now as far as what we've received year to date, plus a reduction possibly of interest rates over the next year. Flowing into the expenditures, I have my salary in there, and then I have put a placeholder for a position, an administrative assistant position for the EDC. and then also benefits related to that position. And then the other individual line items, I'm not going to go through each one. And I don't know that we necessarily have to keep all of these line items. There are some that were budgeted last year that have not had expenditures in them this year. So we can certainly consolidate and eliminate some of those. But overall, the philosophy from my side was the elimination of funds related to our incentive programs, the tenant improvement program, the arts program, all of the grants that we've historically had allocations to, I reduced to zero, and then left one incentive, the new development incentive, with a $150,000 figure in there. And the other item that I also added in this expenditure line items is for strategic plan. And so I've put a placeholder and budgeted $125,000 related to that. Most of the other expenditures, as far as operational expenses and things of that nature, I kept the same. We do have a lot of fixed costs related to our 380 reimbursement for our 380 agreement, as well as for our debt service payments. So those items are fixed and will remain the same going into this year's budget. Down at the bottom, I did increase the park line item to what our estimate was for the parking lot on our previous information that we had. The new information came in after I was able to get this out to you all. So as you know, the newer pricing for the parking lot is about $130,000 more than what I've budgeted for in this budget. So if we want to allocate all of the parking lot pricing into this budget, then we can either look at shifting some of the other items or look at using some of our fund balance, which I did provide our audit, which has our financial statements and shows where we are historically with our fund savings. So in general, that was my philosophy in creating that, but I would open it up to you all to provide feedback.
Okay, we'll start there with you, Greg.
I know Sabrina had something that she was,
No, go ahead.
I'm re-reviewing right now. He kind of hit what I was thinking. I think that we're doing the right thing by reallocating some of these funds and doing away with some of these incentives that we were doing in the past. But I just want to make sure that we're allocating the right amount of money for everything.
I agree. And I'll be honest with you, there are some of these. So over the last year, there's been myself, interim executive director, and then my predecessor that have all paid funds and allocated to different line items. So I'm not necessarily sure all of the expenditures to date have gone under proper line items as they were put on this form or on the previous budget. So I say that I know over the next year, I know the funding line expenditures that I'll be allocating to and how that'll play out. But right now, there are some line items that, like I said, there was budgeted for, and we haven't spent any funds towards it. So I'm not real sure why they were budgeted, and we can eliminate those. And then, for instance, our visitor center, $135,000 was budgeted, and that was to help finish out the visitor center. And so we've spent maybe 75,000 of that so far, and about 65 of that was just going to a contractor to do the final improvements to the facility. So that's why I reduced that line item so significantly, is because, and that might even be a little bit high, I don't see there being a whole lot more work that needs to go in over there related to the finish out. So it's hard for me to understand how much to bring something down, but that's just an example of what I'm looking at.
Under marketing and city events, I know that we kind of have a plan to start looking for certain types of businesses. Is that going to be enough to help with doing things of that nature, or to help you with doing that kind of?
So it's a good question. And there's actually two line items: marketing city events and then marketing tourism. The marketing city events, and is my understanding is that is a fixed payment that we are paying to the city related to them and Cornwall and different events that the city's putting on. So I think if we're going to look at any type of marketing related to the EDC specifically, we might want to look at the marketing tourism line item.
And so what I'm thinking about, just so you understand where my mind is, would be, if we're going to be targeting certain businesses, we want to market towards those businesses. And cutting down on that budget a little bit, would it be enough to do what you need to do? Because I have no idea, I'm not a.
Greg, I think that falls under a different line item though.
Does it?
Yeah, because that marketing, I mean, in the past, that, the intention of that was actually marketing the city
Okay.
or tourism, for people to come in. It wasn't to attract any type of business at all. That would, assumably, had fallen under some of the incentive programs and stuff that we were using that to, either that or, previous director was attending some conferences and stuff like that, where we would tout some of those, properties that we have and incentives that we have through those. So if we're trying to attract a certain business, I think it has to go on a different line
Yeah,
item.
the marketing and city events was paid straight to the city, and then they used it to pay for different things.
Okay.
Parade, market days, those particular items. We never saw an actual breakdown of how each item was spent. It was just basically went to the city, and then they divvied it up from there.
Gotcha.
So the marketing tourism line item, though, we have had expenditures related to the Google 360 program comes out of that. There were purchases of various, like keychains and the corn, the sponge, those types of things were coming out of that line item. So I did reduce it. I reduced it by 40,000 because we haven't spent anywhere near that 75. I can take a look and see if the 35 will be enough for what my plans would be related to that. But like Director Lutz was saying, I'm not real sure if we were outwardly marketing for business attraction, where that was falling in this budget.
Yeah, and I mean, like, for instance, just a steakhouse. Let's just say that we want a high-end steakhouse. Marketing directly to all the steakhouses around is what I'm thinking. Wouldn't that be considered marketing? Not,
No, I mean, that's Scott's job to do that. So that, I mean, we're paying him to do that in essence as part of this. So I don't know that where would we spend money on to do that though? There shouldn't be an additional expense to market to potential businesses, I wouldn't think. If there's any money to be spent, it would be to incentivize them to come in.
okay.
Right, not necessarily unless we're paying a third party to specifically go you know what I mean? Paying a third party to go do that. That would be the only place I see us spending money to market to a potential business or industry or what have you. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I completely understand it. I just want to,
Well,
And that can be something we discuss too. I mean, that can be discussed, but I do think it needs to be.
I know
don't
the
see a line
incentives
item.
are, but the incentives are kind of a general thing. But we can make it specific and say, we're doing this for a steakhouse or for another chicken place.
well, I'll say this. I think from my perspective, going into the next year, to market specifically for, say, a steakhouse for Helotes, and I'm just using that as an example.
example.
There's a lot of things that need to happen before there would even be outreach for that to occur. So there may be expenses related to feasibility and things of that nature related to then going out and getting a steakhouse. In addition, I feel like our organization is still maybe trying to turn the corner and getting its legs under it in some certain aspects before we should even be out there trying to approach some of those activities. So I hear you, but I don't know that that is something here in the near future that is going to be that we're going to be capable of, so to speak. Now, on the flip side of that, there is the Visit Helotes side of EDC and tourism. And so that is something that we are promoting, come eat and play in Helotes. And we have a website dedicated to that. So I do think we need to allocate funds for that type of activity.
And part of the discussion related to specific industries and/or development at large, some of those discussions will flow through the developer as opposed to the Helotes EDC expending certain measures of funds. Some of that is discussion, some of that is leveraging influence and/or intent, as well as maybe even joining in some pre-development type discussions. But those are cost neutral from a fiscal standpoint. It's a time expenditure of the director plus developmental services and others.
Well, and from my perspective, I think for outreach of attraction, we have a lot of work to do, and I think the strategic plan would put a lot of that in place. But I also think we need to know who we are and how we're branding ourselves before we're out there. And that's going to take some additional work and some additional funds before we're promoting ourselves out there. We have to have a story and a message, and I think all that still needs to be developed.
Gotcha. So Scott, the Visit Helotes and those type of things, that's, I assume, still falling though under the marketing tourism line item, the 35,000 that's proposed there. Would that
From my perspective, yes. Now, historically, I'm not real sure.
Yeah, and I think the reason it was so high was because a lot of that fell under that line item, but then also there was the potential of doing some of these other broader marketing campaigns through that we've seen come up, the video, the TV show, and those type of things were discussed in years past too. So I think that's been left elevated because that was a potential
Okay.
at one time. So I'm good with lowering it as it's done there, but that's just, I think a lot of that stuff was put under that line item there.
And just for reference, on the revenue and expense report that we approved in the consent agenda, so it has our year-to-date expenditures for each of these line items. So if you want to reference back, so for marketing and tourism, we have so far, year-to-date, spent $11,000 out of that 75.
Yeah.
Very frugal.
Can you, that I'll speak to under the commodities section, the second line item there, operational expenses at 20,000. What do you see as falling under operational expenses? What is that?
For me? Mm-hmm. For me, that would be operations of the EDC. Now, it might also include operations of the visitor center, or what's termed as the visitor center, but I don't know, again, what's fallen historically under that visitor center line item. If there were any operational expenses that actually went under it as well, but operational expenses would be operational expenses of the EDC.
Yeah.
Would it be like the contract for the printer and copier machine?
That makes sense.
Utilities, everything.
The internet line?
Thank you. Yeah. I see $8,800 has been spent this year.
Yep.
And utilities?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. That helps. Thank you.
My supplies, like everything related to operating it. Now, getting into how we are operating currently, purchasing snacks and things for the facility. So that would have to be considered as part of operational under our current operating method.
Can I have one more thing real quick and then I'll be done? Sorry. Just as a history, historically, the discussion of an assistant or an administrative position has not been looked favorably on
Sure.
by the city council to approve our budget. So I've been open to the idea because I've seen the workload that's there on the EDC director, but I don't know how that's going to be viewed
Sure.
this
No,
year.
I understand.
So,
I think, from my perspective, again, it isn't something where I would run out October 1st and put a job posting. But I do need to understand, and I think we're going to have continued conversations in our board meetings about how we operate so that I know where my time can be allocated. There are built-in administrative functions in having board meetings and the processes related to that, and then council meetings, and all of that is a built-in administrative process. How much of that I can handle, I'm doing it now. Now you put on top doing how we're operating at the business center currently, then my ability to be out and do any of these other things that we talked about diminishes significantly. So do we want to operate that way, or do we want to bring somebody in if we're going to stay the same model that we're doing and alleviate some of that administrative duty to where I can focus on other things?
yeah.
So I think there is a little bit more to play out, but if this is the model that I've been operating for the last 3 months, I'll go to bat all day long that we need an administrative assistant.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think relaying that context and giving that information is important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You finished?
I am done. Yes, sorry. My apologies.
Well, my favorite item in this budget is the $125,000 for a strategic planning firm. Because I think a lot of what we were talking about earlier with marketing or any kind of outreach or whatever we're doing, we don't have a plan. We've had a work plan, but it has not been a strategic plan. And that's going to be obviously a long process and something that we would have for the following fiscal year. I would also recommend adding in a line item for a marketing branding agency
Okay.
as well. I would probably budget, I think you could do a little bit less, I think between 75 and 100.
For that new line item?
Yeah, but just as you said, we don't have a story. You know, what are we selling? And what are our priorities? So I think having a strategic plan is going to give us some direction. And I think having a marketing agency develop our brand, because I don't know what our brand is and our key messages and how we present Helotes and the work of the EDC. And I think those would be two really significant changes for the organization. I would also add in a travel budget.
Okay.
You're probably more familiar with conferences outside of San Antonio that would include our target audiences. I think it's really important for you to be able to attend those. And then an advertising budget. And that's different than marketing, so I think there should be a line item in there for advertising. And as far as an administrative assistant, I've looked at over 40 EDCs. None of them are being run by one person. So it makes sense to me, especially if you're going to be out there. Somebody needs to still be here,
Yeah.
kind of doing the day-to-day.
Yeah.
What else? I think those are my only suggestions. Looks great.
Yeah. Can I ask you a couple questions? So advertising line item, would you have a recommendation of a figure for that?
I would put a small, I would start with $20,000 because again, I don't think we can advertise until we have a strategic plan. And that could be a 5-6 month process before it's finalized. And so there'd be very little time left in the fiscal year to actually start that.
So do you see strategic plan, then the marketing, and then the advertising?
Yes.
In that order?
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking too.
And related to the travel now, so Director Soanes had emailed me after I sent out the budget for your all's comments. So I did adjust, and I can certainly make it its own line item, So under school seminars and conferences, I upped
Okay.
by $2,000 for that, somewhat incorporating travel into it. Now, I can
Okay.
separate that out and just have a separate travel line item.
No, as long as it's understood that it's in that line item.
Okay.
I don't think you need to make it separate.
Okay.
And you do realize that the mileage just went up to
Oh, okay.
70 cents a mile now versus 53.
Okay.
So,
Did not know that.
yes.
Well, I will ask then, I'm sorry, were you finished with your suggestion? So I would ask then, related to the park line item, there is the difference related to the updated pricing. Do we want to try to put all of that figure in this budget? Do we want to somehow parcel it? What is the board's feedback on that?
This is where I think it comes into needing real numbers, or at least closer numbers, because this is pretty much directly dealing with the parking lot. And the flip side of that would be, it's easier for us to start higher and go lower in our budget. So I think that would make sense.
Okay. So with the other items suggested and that additional amount for the park, would the board recommend that then a use of funds up under miscellaneous revenue, have a use of funds balance to accommodate those extra items?
Do we have to have those allocated in order, and what I mean by that is, it's just, if you did put it as a separate miscellaneous, and we ended up using it for the park, will we have to come back to council in order to get approved to use that money?
No, he's talking about where the income's coming from.
Oh, sorry.
Not, he would still put it down in the park.
Okay.
But then it would be where the income was coming in from.
It's an overage.
Correct?
Correct. So
Sorry.
the past budget allocated 600,000 roughly to that. I don't know that that was even used actually, but it was at least there if needed.
I do think it's hard as a board to make decisions on whether or not to pay for parking lots when we don't have a strategic plan. So, I think that's the struggle here, is with a lot of these discussions is, I agree with Director McGowan, that's probably, in my opinion, one of the most important line items on this budget. So I would recommend we just put a hold on it.
Hold
Until
on
we
the park?
really know, yeah, on the parking lot, until we really know what is the direction and focus of this EDC, and does that fit into what this board is trying to do. I'm just one person, I welcome other comments.
Well, if I may on that, does anyone perceive that there is a significant challenge to the parking portion of the large park that we have? And if we see that as a priority and maybe a highest and best use of funds related to quality of life in this season, whether we have a strategic plan completed or not, I understand the importance of that, but I don't know that you all are even pausing in the thought about the quality of life aspect of that park and the potential uses that could increase if there's a parking lot over there. So I give that to you for your consideration with respect to the importance of having a master strategic plan. I don't dispute that at all, but I don't think that you all are even thumb wrestling internally about the parking need.
How long does a strategic plan take typically? Is that 3 months? Is that 6 months?
Could
Yeah, I was gonna, go ahead.
6 months. Other communities, they've taken 12.
Really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
much
we-
Well,
larger.
into next year's.
Yeah. And 125,000 is I have no idea what the price
Well, you're
I
also
would say-
considering, I apologize, you're also considering your meeting frequency. You only meet once a month, and it's a potential that there is 11 times, not 12.
Right. So,
Yeah, I think we would have to go out for qualifications, make a selection, and then, they're gonna come and visit, they're gonna hold focus groups amongst the community, it's gonna take quite a process. And they're probably gonna be located, possibly out of state. I know there's a lot of consultants from Georgia that who work out here, so.
Yeah, they form a steering committee that goes beyond the board.
Right.
And
Right.
the council, and there's community leaders, business leaders.
I mean, there's a potential that we can meet more than once a month if we have to. We can call special meetings.
Absolutely.
We can. Anybody else have any comments on this?
I would rather have the money in the budget and not need it. I'm pretty good about not spending money, so but it's just a lot harder to go and try to, if we do decide to move forward with a project, it's a lot harder to go back and amend.
It makes it take a lot longer.
So we could have the money in the budget, and then as far as the timing on doing anything with the parking lot, determine if that really fits within the strategic vision.
If we put,
At least the money's been allocated, and if it doesn't fit within the vision, we don't spend it.
parking total,
If it does, we have it.
so if we put, was it 460, 470, something like that?
I think 460.
Page 44.
Yeah, 460.
Okay, so if we put 460 in there, in for the parking lot, and we make our budget go through, and it winds up that we decide we don't want to do the parking lot, it doesn't hurt us to have it there. It just doesn't get spent.
Right.
But if we leave it at 330 and we decide we want to go ahead and move forward with that, it's a lot more hoops we have to jump through to try to get that other 130. So it's easier to do it on the beginning side and not spend it than it would be to go back and request more. Considering that we already have data showing that it's going to potentially be more than the 330. I think it would be doing us a disservice if we did not allocate more.
And construction prices are always going up. So by waiting 30, 60, 90 days longer, whatever we go and we approve to get more, by the time we get it approved, there's a good chance that costs are going to go up again and we got to get reapproved. So
I just, on that note, I just did some quotes on some steel, and the quote is good to the end of the business day.
makes sense.
That's how good, that's how long the quotes are good for right now.
Yeah.
So maybe something to consider is the number for the sake of the budget and contingencies and all these other things that occur in the construction world, is really the number for the sake of the budget more like 500,000.
I mean, that's probably not unrealistic. Whether we would approve spending that later on, but budgeting, I don't think that's an unrealistic number personally.
We've taken a lot of other budget numbers out, so allocating them to something that's productive.
And when we do our sourcing or our procurement process, we're not necessarily looking for the highest price. We have a very, very structured method of
Yes.
finding the lowest appropriate.
Well, I mean, we might have a circumstance where, we can get both parking lots done for that price if we did them at one time. Yeah, there's situations where maybe it would fit the bill better.
I don't think we can do that second parking lot until 1560's done.
We just can't do the apron. There's a gate there. So
Oh, I see what you're saying, okay.
Yeah.
there could be a physical spot there. The apron couldn't be there until 1560 was done.
Very good.
Since there's a gate there, there could be a parking lot. Or it doesn't even have to, you don't have to call it a parking lot. It could just be a section of asphalt.
Yeah.
Flat work.
Yep.
Okay. Fair.
Scott, do you have any other questions on budget, or do you have enough information? with-
Well, I would like, so is the direction to allocate 500,000 related to the park? Is that what I'm hearing as a figure?
I think,
Okay.
my opinion is yes.
Okay.
Should we need to vote on that?
No, not yet.
Well, kind of a consensus.
You're gonna end up voting.
Right, it's kind of a consensus for now. So, I mean, I'm seeing two, seeing Joel.
What's that? Yeah, and I'm okay with pulling those funds from some of our, it doesn't have to.
So I would say the consensus is yes, so I would put it in there for now.
Okay, so my plan is to take all of the comments and feedback, incorporate it into the new budget proposal for the next meeting. And then, I don't have a set format other than what I've provided here. If there's some sort of format the board prefers, I can certainly work with that. But then I would be bringing that budget to you all for approval in August and then incorporate it into the city's process for the council approval in September-ish.
May I make one more request related to budget?
Yeah,
I think it would be helpful for our board to have a future closed session agenda item to discuss EDC executive director salary for the budget.
okay.
Okay, if that's, can be added to the next month's agenda.
Okay. I have everything I need then, sir.
Okay. All right. So let's scroll back up here to the top. Okay. So we have now completed it. Okay, number 7 is going to be committee reports. Okay.
You're in last month's,
Oh, there we go. Closed session. Closed session is in accordance with the provision of Chapter 551 Texas Local Government Code, Section 551.071. Consult with the attorney, and 551.072 deliberations regarding real property to include the following: discussion of the current lease. So we are going to move into executive session. We're going to close this out for now at 8:01. We ended the executive session. I'm going to bring us back into regular session at 9:26. Okay. Number 8, discussion and possible action on the matters discussed in closed session. Do we have a motion?
We do. I move to authorize the executive director to negotiate the leases associated with the landlord and business memberships through no later than September 2026.
Second.
Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Being that we have no other further business to discuss, I move that we adjourn at 9:27.